everywhere we go, communication is key, especially body language, um, written, and verbal communication. Hello, welcome to Nabure Chesa TV, where humility plus simplicity equals authenticity. My name is Mildred Chesa. I am a life, marriage, and relationship coach by experience and a broadcast journalist by profession. On today's topic, we will talk about communication. What is communication? It's the relaying of information from one person to another or to people. And it can be relayed through behavior, word of mouth, symbols, and it can be written, verbal, non-verbal. So communication as a whole is very important because that is how we interact with each other every day. And that is how we get information from one place to another or from one person to another. Therefore, it is very important to understand communication because it is really the foundation of many relationships. It is the foundation of many business meetings, and it helps people understand each other. And sometimes it is also the biggest contribution to people misunderstanding each other, depending on how well they communicate to each other. Understanding how to communicate is very important. And sometimes you will need to use the nonverbal communication, which is still communication. And sometimes the nonverbal communication is louder than the verbal communication. And sometimes the verbal communication is louder than the nonverbal communication. Therefore, it is important for us to always understand how crucial communication is in many relationships that we build or that we are in, be it in families, be it in friendships, be it in couples, because lack of communication makes things harder and harder as people continue knowing each other or as people get to know each other. And to understand how others communicate is also very important because sometimes we are more focused on what we have to say and do not really listen to what the other person has to say. And listening is also a very big part of communication that most of us struggle with. In fact, most communications are broken because we do not listen to what the other person has to say. We do not take time to understand what the other person meant. And therefore, sometimes we take things out of context because of our own triggers or our own struggles from the inside or our own perspective of different topics. So sometimes somebody can say something, but because of our own triggers, the other person may not have really said something too big, but because of your own struggles, your own triggers, your own insecurities, you blow it out of proportion. And sometimes the other person will be wondering, like, what did I say that made them act this way? Therefore, we're still on the topic of understanding your traumas. If you do not understand your traumas, your communication many times will fall below par, because every time you want to pass a message across, you will always go back into yourself and put it across from a point of triggers and not from a point of what you want the other person to get. You will find that some people, it's very hard for them to listen to others because they feel like they know better. They feel like maybe the other person doesn't really know how to say what they have to say. Instead of understanding that the other person has a right to communicate to you the way they know how, it is not about how you know it, it is about how they are supposed to communicate to you. And at the end of their communication, you're supposed to respond the way you know how, not respond in such a way that makes them feel like they did not communicate. And that is why, in many relationships, communication is key, because communication can really go so deep in breaking up a relationship. Communication can go so deep in making somebody feel less for a very long time. And sometimes people think that it is only the words that we speak that make other people feel a type of way. No. Sometimes your body language will speak too loud, because you may be sitting across somebody and you're talking to them, but the way they are rolling their eyes, the way they are looking at you in a way to show that whatever you're saying is not getting to them, the way they shift some parts of their body will tell you a lot on if they are really listening to what you have to say. Sometimes um, words in written form can look so innocent, but words in written form have a message that can linger in people's minds. Sometimes you would write something and somebody would say, "Oh my God, he was very rude in his writing." And sometimes you wouldn't understand why. But it is because even when you're writing, your emotional space while you're writing whatever you're writing will go into your writing. So the words you'll be writing will bring out the emotions you had while you are writing whatever you're writing. And sometimes people do not understand that. Therefore, learning how to communicate is very important. But you cannot learn all this if you do not first deal with your traumas that help you understand that whenever you're communicating, it's about you and the person you're communicating to. So anytime you're communicating, you put your feelings into consideration, but you also put the other person's feelings into consideration. And by the end of it all, you will find that your communication will run smoothly, because you're giving yourself time to process what the other person is saying, And you're also giving yourself time to understand that you have to be clear so that the other person can understand, because sometimes clarity in communication is very important. Some people are not so clear when they are communicating, and sometimes it's intentional because they want to create a space of confusion. They want to say what they want to say, but trying to hide parts of the information so that later on, when they ask you about it, you will be like, okay, you'll be confused because you'll be like, okay, I heard them say A, B, C, D, but I'm not really sure if they say this other part. And that is why when somebody is communicating to you, you have to really be a good listener, so that when you're dealing with such people who like hiding some things in the communication and then later on come around and twist it to make you feel like you're the one who didn't hear, after they have communicated to you, make sure you ask them questions so that you understand what they meant. Therefore, learning how to communicate and how to listen is very important, because literally communication is all about listening more than hearing, because sometimes you hear what you want to hear, but when you listen, it means you try to understand what the other person meant, not how you hear it, but what they are trying to pass across. So when you're communicating, you also need to be very clear so that the other person can understand where you're coming from and what you're trying to communicate. So it is important to learn two things in communication: be as clear as possible, be a good listener. If you understand those two things, it will be very easy for you to maneuver when you're communicating to others. Because when you're a good listener, you will get what they really mean, or you will get the other ones who want to confuse you to come back later and make you feel like you're the one who did not hear, you're the one who did not listen. And also, when you're clear in your communication, it also helps you to be okay with yourself, knowing that I was as clear as possible. So if they are pretending like they didn't hear you, it is up to them. Therefore, learning how to communicate is the best thing that you can do to yourself, because everywhere we go, communication is key, especially body language, um, written and verbal communication. You have to practice how to make others understand you, and also you have to learn self-control so that when others are speaking, you learn to listen. That was all for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, keep it simple. Remember to comment, share, like, subscribe, and hit that notification button so that anytime we upload a video, you will be notified. Kwaheri.